In this video, we'll see how to place ceiling hosted components such as lights. We'll see how to align those components to the ceiling grid and how to array the components across the ceiling grid to create a lighting layout. I have the exercise file, ceiling hosted components, open, and we're looking at the conference area ceiling plan, which is where we will place the lights. To place a light fitting in the model, we'll go to the Architecture ribbon tab, and from the Build panel, we'll choose the Place a Component tool. Looking at the type selector here, we can see that we have various components with this, including some planting and an elevator here, but no actual light fittings. So first, we'll need to load those light fitting families into the project for us to use. So I'll choose Modify to cancel the Place a Component tool. And then to load the light fittings, we'll go to the Insert ribbon tab, and from the Load from Library panel, we'll click Load Autodesk Family. This will open up the cloud-based Autodesk content browser. And before we look for families, we just need to check the locale settings to ensure the region is set to United States Imperial. Looking at the Browse folders on the left-hand side, we'll click on the Lighting folder. And then from the subfolders, we'll choose the Architectural Internal folder. Now we can see we have some light fittings in the Results panel here. Scrolling down, we'll choose the Pendant Lamp Arc Glass LED. And scrolling down to the bottom, we'll choose the Trofolight 2x4 Parabolic. We'll then click Load, and this will be downloaded into our project for us to use. So now that we have those loaded, we'll go back to the Architecture ribbon tab, and from the Build panel, we'll click on the Place a Component tool. Straight away in the type selector, we can see we have the Trofolight 2x4 Parabolic as one of the ones that we downloaded. If I click on the type selector here, we'll look at the search bar and we'll type in lamp, and then we can see we also have the pendant lamp and the other Trofolamps too. So we'll place the Trofolight 2x4 4 lamp 120 volt type. And now as I move my cursor over the window, we can see we have the symbol that shows we need to place it into a ceiling as it's a hosted family. So as we go over the ceiling here, we can see the preview of the light. We can also see that we're not actually getting any object snaps for the grid, so we'll just have to place this into the ceiling, and then we'll align it into the correct place afterwards. So we'll click Modify to finish placing the lights, and we'll align this to line up with the ceiling grid. So from the Modify ribbon tab on the Modify panel, we'll choose the Align tool, and then we'll click the upper horizontal grid line as the reference, and then click the top of the light fitting to align to that. Now we'll click the vertical grid on the left side, and then the left side of the light fitting to align that into its position. So now that's aligned to the ceiling grid, we'll choose Modify to finish the Align tool, and we'll array the light fitting across the conference room to create the lighting layout. So first we'll select the light fitting, and then from the Modify Lighting Fixtures ribbon on the Modify panel here, we'll choose the Array tool. Now looking at the options bar, we can see it's set to a linear array. We'll uncheck the Group and Associate option, and we'll change the number from 2 to 3. And we can see we have the Move To option set to second. So now we can go down into the view, and we'll click on the vertical grid line on the left for the start point. And then we'll leave a gap of 1 tile here, so we'll move across to the second and then click. And then we'll get the 3 light fittings arrayed across the room. So now we'll do this in the opposite direction. So we'll select these light fittings, and I'll just use the Control key to multiple select them. And then we'll go back to the Modify tab and choose the Array tool once more. And now looking at the options bar, we need to set the number to 3 again. And this time we'll change the Move To option from second to last. Now we're ready to array these, so we'll use the lower grid line by the light fitting here as the base point, so we'll click here. And now we'll go to the last grid line, so moving down to the bottom of the room, and we'll click on this grid line here to be the last point, so that we then get the 3 light fittings arrayed between those 2 grid lines. We can see we have one that's outside of the room due to the shape of the room here, so I'll select this one And then from the Modify ribbon tab, we'll just click Delete to get rid of it. Looking at the layout, it's slightly off-centered, so we'll move the actual ceiling grid to adjust the lighting layout. So I'll select one of the vertical grid lines here, and then from the Modify ribbon, we'll choose the Move tool. And then we'll snap to the grid line for the base point, and we need to move this across by 2 feet, so we'll type that in, as 2 feet is half a tile. And we can see that's now been centered in the room, and the lights have also moved as they're hosted by the ceiling. So now, panning across to the reception area, we can see we have this circular inset ceiling. And we'll place the pendant light fitting on this ceiling. So going back to the Architecture ribbon tab, from the Build panel, we'll choose Place a Component again. From the Type selector, we'll type in lamp into the search box and then choose the standard pendant lamp type. Looking at the Place Component ribbon at the top, we can see we have placement options for place on vertical face, place on face, and place on work plane. It's currently set to place on face, which is correct in this instance. So now going over the model, we can see the preview of the light, and it's highlighting the face that it's going to connect to, which is our inset ceiling. We want to snap to the center of this, so I'll use the keyboard shortcut to override the snaps. So we'll type the letters SC on the keyboard, and then as we move to the edge of the ceiling, we can see it pick up the center of that circle, and we'll click to place that light in the center of the ceiling. So now we have that placed. I'll click Modify to finish the Place a Component tool. And now we need to move it to the edge of the ceiling. So I'll select the light fitting, and from the Modify ribbon tab, we'll choose the Move tool, and then we'll click on a base point, and moving vertically upwards, we'll type in the distance of 4 feet to move it to the edge of the ceiling. Now we need to array the light fitting, so whilst it's still selected, we can go to the Modify ribbon tab again and choose the Array tool. Looking at the options bar, we'll change it from linear to radial array. We'll change the number from 3 to 8, and we'll change the Move To setting back to second. Now going over the window, we can see the center of the rotation is actually in the center of the light fitting. We need this to be in the center of the ceiling. So looking at the options bar, we have center of rotation, and we'll click Place. And now we can go and snap to the center of the ceiling. So I'll type SC to override the snaps. And then we'll click on the edge to get the center of the ceiling. So now we have the center of rotation there. We'll start by clicking vertically upwards, and then going clockwise, we'll go around to 45 degrees, and then click to set that as the angle of the second. And then we can see we have all 8 light fittings arrayed around the edge of our inset ceiling. So that's got those light fittings placed in the model. We'll go and review these. So from the project browser, we'll open up the section view, section 1. And then zooming into the 4th floor here, we can see those pendant lights on that inset ceiling. And if I select that inset ceiling now, and from the properties palette, we'll change the height offset from level parameter to 9'6". And we can see that move down and the pendant lights follow it as it's hosted. So I'll change it back to 10 feet and we'll see those move back up again. Now we'll have a look at the 3D view. So from the Quick Access toolbar, we'll click to open the default 3D view. And this is obviously looking at the entire model at the moment. However, zooming into the area of the conference room, I can see we have a scope box here, which is called Conference Rooms. So looking at the Properties palette for the 3D view, on the Extents panel, we have the parameter for scope box. It's currently set to none, so we'll click and choose the Conference Room scope box. And straight away we can see that 3D view being cropped to the scope box, and we can see in to see our lights hosted by the ceiling there. So to demonstrate this again, I'll select the ceiling in the conference room, and we'll change its height offset from level up to 11 feet. And we can see that move up, and the lights that are hosted follow it. So I'll set it back to 9 feet, and the lights will once again follow it. And that finishes placing the lights into our conference area.